An elderly woman signals a waitress in silence. She calls 911. Next day, a Millionaire CEO kneels. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, back to our main character. Sarah Miller was just an ordinary young woman, serving tables at a small diner tucked away in the corner of a busy street. With bright eyes and an eager smile, she made it a point to make every customer feel welcome, even when her shift was long and tiring. But tonight was different. The late hour and the quiet murmur of the few customers in the diner should have been a sign of a peaceful evening. However, an unexpected encounter was about to change everything for Sarah. It began when a frail, elderly woman, sitting quietly at a table in the corner, caught Sarah's attention. Her hands trembled slightly as she tried to lift her coffee cup, and Sarah quickly moved to offer assistance. "Can I help you with that, ma'am?" Sarah asked gently. The woman looked up at her, her tired eyes filled with a quiet desperation. But then, instead of speaking, the elderly woman simply raised her hand and made a subtle gesture, a slow motion of her fingers tapping the air. Sarah blinked, unsure of what the gesture meant, but something in her gut told her it was important. She leaned in closer, her expression softening. The woman's lips barely moved as she signaled again. It was almost as if she was trying to communicate in the only way she could. Sarah paused, her intuition telling her that something was wrong. Without hesitating, she reached for her phone and quickly dialed 911. Her voice steady but anxious as she explained the situation. Moments later, paramedics arrived, and the elderly woman was taken to the hospital, but not before giving Sarah a look of quiet gratitude. Sarah watched them leave, a feeling of unease settling in her stomach. What had just happened? Why had the woman acted so strangely? Little did Sarah know, this one small act of kindness was about to set off a chain of events that would leave her life forever changed. The next day, Sarah arrived at work, trying to push the strange encounter from her mind. She was still lost in her thoughts when, out of nowhere, a man walked in. His tall frame and sharp suit made him stand out in the small diner, and his confidence radiated as he moved toward her. "Is Sarah Miller here?" he asked, his voice calm and commanding. Sarah looked up, slightly startled. "I'm Sarah," she said, walking over to greet him. The man gave her a tight smile before speaking again. "I'm David West, and I believe you helped my mother yesterday." David West stood there, his expression unreadable as Sarah's mind raced. She had only been doing her job the night before, helping an elderly woman who seemed like any other customer. But now, this stranger, who was clearly not just any man, was standing in front of her, and everything felt like it was about to shift. She had no idea who he was or how he had connected the dots. "You're the woman who helped my mother yesterday?" David asked again, his voice calm but laced with something deeper. "Yes," Sarah replied, unsure of what to make of the situation. "She came in here, and, well, she wasn't feeling well, so I called 911. I didn't know who she was or why she needed help. I just did what I thought was right." David's eyes softened slightly as he took in her words. He glanced around the small diner, taking in the worn-out tables, the faded booths, and the smell of coffee that lingered in the air. "I'm sure it's not often you find yourself in situations like that," he said, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. "Not at all," Sarah replied, still unsure of where this conversation was going. "But I'm glad I could help." David's gaze flickered for a moment. Then he looked back at her, his voice taking on a more serious tone. "My mother, Sarah, she's not just any woman. She's a major part of my life. And her health? Well, it's been difficult. She has been battling a number of things for years. The fact that you helped her yesterday, when no one else seemed to notice, means more than you can imagine." Sarah's heart began to race. She hadn't known the elderly woman was someone important to anyone, let alone a millionaire like David. "I didn't know," Sarah said softly. "I just saw someone who needed help, and I did what I could." "I understand," David replied, his voice steady. "But you didn't have to. You didn't have to step in, and you certainly didn't have to care. Yet you did." Sarah looked down at the floor, trying to process what he was saying. She had always prided herself on doing what was right, no matter the circumstances, but she never expected to be acknowledged for it, let alone have someone this important stand in front of her, speaking so highly of her actions. I know it's probably overwhelming, David continued, but there's something I need to ask you. My mother, as I said, is incredibly important to me, and I don't want her to feel alone, especially when she's in need of care. I've been thinking about what you did, and I want to offer you something. A job, a position in my company. Sarah's eyes widened. A job? With him? The CEO of a major corporation? I'm not sure I understand, she stammered. You want to hire me? David nodded. Yes. I've been looking for someone with your level of integrity. Someone who isn't afraid to step up, even when it's difficult. And frankly, I've been looking for someone who can offer a perspective that I don't have. I've been running my company for years, but I've lost sight of what really matters. You've shown me that there's more to life than just business deals and profit margins. Sarah blinked, her mind racing as she processed what he was saying. I don't know if I'm the right person for that, she said quietly. I've never worked in a corporate setting. That doesn't matter, David said firmly. You have something that's more valuable than any degree or business experience. You have empathy, and that's something I could use in my life and in my company. Sarah was speechless. She had never imagined anything like this would happen. She was just a waitress, a regular person who had taken a moment to help someone in need. And now, here she was, being offered an opportunity that most people only dreamed of. I don't know what to say, she said. Finally, her voice barely above a whisper. You don't have to say anything right now, David said, offering her a reassuring smile. But think about it. I know it's a big decision, but I believe in you, Sarah. I truly do. For a moment, Sarah stood there, overwhelmed by the gravity of the situation. She had never been given a chance like this before, never been recognized for the things she had done in her life. And yet, here was David West, a powerful man, offering her the kind of future she had never even dared to imagine. As he turned to leave, he paused at the door and looked back at her. You saved my mother's life, Sarah. The least I can do is offer you the opportunity to change yours. With that, he walked out, leaving Sarah standing in the middle of the diner, her heart racing and her mind reeling from the unexpected turn her life had just taken. The next few days passed in a blur for Sarah. She couldn't shake the offer David West had made her. A job with his company? It seemed unreal. She had spent years working in a small diner, serving people who barely noticed her, yet here she was, being offered a chance to leave all of that behind. It wasn't just any job, either. This was a position with a powerful CEO, someone whose influence stretched far beyond the walls of the restaurant where she worked. The thought made her stomach twist with both excitement and fear. What if she wasn't good enough? What if she didn't belong in his world? But as the days went by, she couldn't stop thinking about it. She replayed the conversation over and over in her head, the way he had looked at her, the sincerity in his voice when he told her he believed in her. She had always been someone who put others first, never thinking much about her own future. But now, with the opportunity laid out before her, she couldn't ignore it. Sarah knew she had to make a decision. But how could she leave everything behind? One evening, after her shift, she sat in the back of the diner, staring at the business card David had given her. It felt surreal to even hold it. A part of her wanted to toss it into the trash, to forget the whole thing. But another part of her, the part that had always dreamed of something more, wanted to pick up the phone and call him. Her fingers trembled as she stared at the number, the silence around her only amplifying the weight of the choice. After what felt like hours, Sarah finally picked up the phone and dialed. The phone rang twice before David answered. Sarah, he said, his voice warm, as if he had been expecting her call. I'm glad to hear from you. She swallowed hard, trying to steady her nerves. I've been thinking about your offer, she began, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside her. And I'm not sure if I'm ready to take such a big step. David's tone softened. I understand. This is a big decision, and it's not something I want you to rush. But I believe you have something special, Sarah. Something that could really make a difference in my company, and in your life. Sarah's heart raced at his words. She had never been someone who saw herself as special. She had always just been the quiet waitress in the back, the one who served coffee and cleared plates. But David was right. She had always given her best, always put others first, and now, it seemed like it was her turn to take something for herself. I'll do it, Sarah said finally, the words coming out more easily than she expected. I'll accept your offer. There was a brief silence on the other end of the line before David spoke again. You won't regret this, he said, his voice full of conviction. I'll have my team reach out to you with the details. We'll get everything set up. As Sarah hung up the phone, a sense of calm washed over her. It was a decision she had been afraid to make, but now that she had made it, she felt something she hadn't in a long time: hope. The next morning, Sarah walked into the diner with a new sense of purpose. She wasn't just going through the motions anymore. She was about to embark on a new chapter in her life, one that she could never have imagined just days before. As she cleared the last table, she looked around the familiar surroundings of the diner, taking in the smells, the sounds, and the faces that had been a part of her life for so long. But she knew that this was just the beginning. Soon, she would be stepping into a world she had only dreamed about. And for the first time in her life, she was ready to face it. The days following Sarah's decision felt like a blur. The next morning, after receiving the call from David's team, she found herself sitting in an office building that seemed so different from the diner she had left behind. Everything was polished, pristine, and so much bigger than anything she had ever known. The stark contrast between her old life and the one she was stepping into was overwhelming. As she walked into the office, she couldn't shake the feeling of being an outsider. The tall windows, the clean-cut employees rushing through their day, the air of corporate efficiency, it was all so foreign to her. She couldn't help but feel a wave of doubt wash over her. Was she really cut out for this? She had always been the quiet girl who kept her head down and did her job without much recognition. This new world felt like a dream she hadn't dared to dream. But David had seen something in her. He had believed in her when she had barely believed in herself. It was that belief that pushed her forward. As she sat at her desk, waiting for her new role to begin, she found herself thinking about the elderly woman, the one who had unknowingly set this all in motion. If it weren't for her quiet gesture that night, Sarah might never have gotten this chance. She had always been the kind of person to help others, but never had she imagined that one small act could change her entire life. Sarah looked out the window, the view of the city stretching out before her. It was beautiful, but in that moment, she realized that it wasn't the city that made her feel alive. It was the opportunity to make a difference, to do something that truly mattered. Just a week ago, she had been clearing tables in a diner, serving food to people who never saw her. Now, she was sitting in a corporate office, being asked to help make decisions that could affect entire companies. It was a world she didn't quite understand, but she was ready to learn. David had made it clear that he believed in her potential. He had told her that she had something different, something the rest of his team didn't have. Sarah didn't fully understand what that something was, but she was determined to figure it out. As the day went on, Sarah slowly adjusted to the rhythm of the office. Her colleagues were kind but distant, and she couldn't help but feel like a fish out of water. She had a lot to learn, and the pressure was mounting. She spent the next few weeks absorbing everything she could. She asked questions, she studied reports, and she kept quiet during meetings, taking in everything around her. Slowly, she began to feel more comfortable in her new role. David checked in with her regularly, offering words of encouragement and advice. He wasn't the kind of boss who hovered, but he always made sure she knew she had his support. One afternoon, as Sarah sat at her desk, David walked in, his usual confident stride softened by something else: genuine care. "How are you doing, Sarah?" he asked, his voice calm and reassuring. Sarah looked up from her computer, surprised to see him standing there. She had been working hard, trying to keep up with the pace of everything, but she hadn't realized how much she had been struggling. "I'm trying to keep up," she said honestly. "It's a lot to take in, but I'm doing my best." David smiled. "I can see that, and that's all I ask. You're doing great." Sarah's chest tightened at his words. She had always doubted herself, never thinking she was good enough for anything beyond the diner. But now, here she was, getting compliments from a man who had built an empire. "I'm glad to hear that," Sarah said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "I've never been in a place like this before, and I'm trying to make sure I don't mess it up." "You won't mess it up," David said, his voice warm and sincere. "You have the right instincts. That's why I hired you. Just keep doing what you're doing, and trust yourself." In that moment, Sarah realized that David's belief in her wasn't just about giving her a job. It was about giving her a chance to believe in herself, to step out of the shadows of doubt, and into a life where she could make an impact. And for the first time, Sarah felt like maybe, just maybe, she deserved this opportunity. Weeks passed, and Sarah continued to settle into her new role at the company. The initial shock of leaving the diner behind was fading, and she was starting to feel more at home in the office. Every day brought new challenges, but she met them with the determination that had always defined her. Slowly, her confidence grew. She was no longer the shy waitress in the corner of the room. She was Sarah Miller, a valued member of a team, trusted by David and the others to make decisions that mattered. Still, despite her progress, there was always a part of her that wondered if she truly belonged in this world. One afternoon, as she sat in her office working through a stack of reports, she received an email from David. The subject line read, "We need to talk." Her heart skipped a beat as she clicked open the message. David wanted to meet with her in his office. "Sarah, come by when you get a chance. I have something important to discuss with you." David. Her mind raced as she closed her laptop and walked down the hallway to David's office. What could he possibly want to talk about? Was this about her performance? Or maybe he was reconsidering his decision to hire her. She couldn't shake the feeling of uncertainty that had been creeping up on her. When she knocked on his door and entered, David looked up from his desk and smiled warmly. "Sarah, good to see you. Please, have a seat." She sat down, trying to remain calm, but the tension in her chest was undeniable. "What's this about?" she asked, her voice betraying her nerves. David's smile softened as he leaned back in his chair. "I've been thinking a lot about you lately, Sarah. You've really exceeded my expectations. In just a short time, you've proven yourself to be an asset to this company. I've seen the way you work, how you handle challenges with such grace, and how you've earned the respect of your colleagues." Sarah felt a wave of relief wash over her, but she kept her composure. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I'm just doing my best." "I know you are," David replied. "And that's exactly why I want to offer you something." Sarah's heart pounded. In her chest. Was this it? The moment she had been waiting for? "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I want to offer you a promotion," David said, his eyes locking onto hers. "I believe you're ready for more responsibility, Sarah. I want you to take on a leadership role. I've been watching you, and I think you have the potential to lead a team. It's time to move you up." Sarah's breath caught in her throat. A promotion? She hadn't expected this. She had barely gotten comfortable in her current role, and now David was offering her even more. "Are you sure?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Absolutely," David said with conviction. "I've seen the way you handle yourself, and I know you're ready for this. You've earned it." Sarah was speechless. She had always dreamed of a chance like this, but never in her wildest imagination had she thought it would come so soon. A leadership role? She wasn't sure if she was ready for that kind of responsibility, but one thing was certain. This was the opportunity of a lifetime. "I don't know what to say," she finally said, her voice soft but filled with gratitude. "You don't need to say anything right now," David said with a smile. "Take some time to think about it. But know that I believe in you, Sarah. You've got what it takes." As Sarah left David's office, she felt a mixture of excitement and fear. This was everything she had ever wanted, but it also came with a weight she hadn't anticipated. Could she really lead a team? Was she capable of the responsibility that came with the promotion? She didn't have all the answers, but one thing was certain. She wasn't the same person who had walked into this office months ago. Sarah had changed, and whatever came next, she was ready to face it head on. Sarah walked into the office the next morning with a new sense of purpose. The promotion David had offered her weighed heavily on her mind, and although she felt a rush of excitement, there was also a quiet fear simmering underneath. Leadership, a word that once seemed so distant to her now felt like it was right in front of her, waiting for her to step into it. She had always been a behind-the-scenes kind of person, never one to draw attention or step into the spotlight. But now, things were changing, and so was she. As she sat down at her desk, she noticed the subtle shift in how her colleagues interacted with her. There was a newfound respect in their eyes, and for the first time, she felt like she truly belonged here. They looked to her for answers, asked her for advice, and trusted her judgment. It wasn't easy. Every decision felt like it carried the weight of the company on her shoulders, but Sarah was determined to prove herself. She knew she had the support of David, and that gave her the confidence to move forward. A few days later, Sarah was in her office, reviewing a new project proposal, when her phone rang. It was David. "Sarah, I need you in the conference room." We have a meeting with the board in an hour, and I'd like you to present your thoughts on the new proposal, he said, his tone warm but firm. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. Present to the board? She had never been in a meeting like this before. She wasn't sure if she was ready, but there was no turning back now. I'll be there, she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. As she made her way to the conference room, her mind raced with questions. What if they didn't like her ideas? What if they thought she wasn't qualified? But as she stepped into the room and saw David standing at the front, waiting for her, a sense of calm settled over her. Everyone, this is Sarah Miller, David began, his voice carrying authority. She's been doing exceptional work, and today, I've asked her to share her perspective on the proposal. Sarah, the floor is yours. Sarah took a deep breath and stood up. For a moment, she felt the eyes of the board members on her, but instead of shrinking back, she straightened her back and began speaking. She shared her insights, outlining her thoughts on how the proposal could be improved, how the company could leverage its strengths, and how they could move forward in a way that was sustainable and profitable. As she spoke, she noticed that the room was silent, but it wasn't an uncomfortable silence. It was the kind of silence that came with respect, with people listening closely to what she had to say. When she finished, David gave her a nod of approval. Thank you, Sarah. Excellent presentation, he said, his smile genuine. The board members exchanged glances, some nodding in agreement, others scribbling notes. For the first time, Sarah felt like she had made an impact. As the meeting wrapped up, David pulled her aside. You did great, Sarah. I knew you had it in you, he said, his voice full of pride. I think this is the beginning of something special. Sarah couldn't help but smile. She had done it. She had stepped out of her comfort zone, faced her fears, and come through stronger than ever. She had earned her place in this world, and the future was wide open. With David's guidance and her own determination, she knew that this was just the beginning of a new chapter in her life. And for the first time in a long time, Sarah felt truly proud of herself. She had worked hard to get here, and now, she was ready to take on whatever came next. As the weeks went by, Sarah's confidence continued to grow. She had settled into her new role, and her colleagues now saw her as a leader, someone they could rely on. The feeling was surreal. It wasn't long ago that she had been a quiet waitress in a small diner, unsure of her place in the world. Now, she was navigating the complex world of corporate meetings, project proposals, and high-stakes decisions. But even as she flourished, Sarah felt the weight of her new responsibilities pressing down on her. It was a constant balancing act between the expectations of her job and the fear that she might not be good enough. One evening, after another long day at work, Sarah sat in her office, staring at the reports scattered across her desk. She had just completed a presentation for the board, and although it had gone well, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more she could have done. She had become her own toughest critic, constantly questioning if her efforts were truly enough. The knock on her door broke her thoughts. She looked up to find David standing in the doorway, his expression warm yet serious. Sarah, got a minute? He asked. Sarah nodded, motioning for him to come in. As David sat down across from her, she could tell there was something on his mind. You've been doing great, he began, his voice calm and reassuring. I've been watching you closely, and I'm really impressed with your progress. But I also want to make sure you're taking care of yourself. You've been working nonstop, and I can see that it's starting to take a toll. Sarah looked down at the stack of papers in front of her, feeling the weight of his words. I'm fine, she replied, her voice soft but firm. I just want to make sure I'm doing the best job I can. I know you do, David said, leaning forward slightly. And that's exactly why I'm telling you this. It's okay to take a step back sometimes. You can't pour from an empty cup. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. The words resonated deeply with her. She had been so focused on proving herself, on meeting everyone's expectations, that she had neglected her own well-being. David's words were a wake-up call. I appreciate the advice, she said quietly. I've just been trying to keep up. I don't want to let anyone down. David smiled, his expression softening. Sarah, you're not going to let anyone down. You're doing amazing work. But you can't do it all by yourself. Don't be afraid to ask for help or take a break when you need it. Sarah nodded slowly, taking in his words. She had always been independent, used to handling things on her own. But David's advice made her realize that it was okay to lean on others sometimes. As the days passed, Sarah made a conscious effort to take better care of herself. She started setting boundaries, making time for her personal life, and learning to ask for help when she needed it. It wasn't always easy, but slowly, she found a balance that allowed her to thrive both at work and in her personal life. David continued to be a steady presence in her life, offering guidance and support whenever she needed it. One afternoon, after a particularly challenging meeting, Sarah found herself sitting at her desk, feeling exhausted. She had given it her all, but there was still so much to do. As she leaned back in her chair, taking a deep breath, David appeared at her door once again. This time, he didn't sit down. He simply walked over, placed a hand on her shoulder, and said, "I'm proud of you, Sarah. Keep going." In that moment, Sarah realized just how far she had come. She had started this journey uncertain and unsure, but now, with David's mentorship and her own determination, she was becoming the leader she had always hoped she could be. Months had passed since Sarah had taken on her new role, and with every passing day, she found herself growing more comfortable with her leadership position. She had learned how to navigate the complexities of the corporate world, balancing meetings, deadlines, and her personal life in a way she never thought possible. The self-doubt that once clouded her mind had started to fade, replaced by a quiet confidence that she carried into every project she worked on. But with this newfound confidence came a sense of responsibility that was sometimes overwhelming. There were moments when Sarah found herself questioning whether she was truly making the right decisions, whether she was living up to the expectations placed on her. One morning, as Sarah sat at her desk reviewing a new proposal, her phone buzzed with a message from David. It was brief, just a simple line. "Meet me in the conference room in 10 minutes. I need to discuss something with you." A wave of anxiety swept over her. Had she made a mistake? Was something wrong with her recent work? She quickly pushed the thoughts aside and took a deep breath. She had been through much worse, and whatever this meeting was about, she would handle it like she always had. With resolve, as she entered the conference room, she found David standing by the window, looking out over the city. He turned as she walked in, offering a reassuring smile. "Sarah," he said, his voice calm. "I'm glad you're here." Sarah tried to keep her nerves in check. "You wanted to talk?" she asked, her voice steady. David nodded, stepping toward the table. "I've been following your progress closely," he began. "You've come a long way since you first started here, and I want you to know that I'm proud of the work you've done. But I think you're ready for the next step." Sarah's heart raced. The next step? What did he mean? "What do you mean?" she asked, her curiosity piqued. David looked at her thoughtfully before speaking again. "I want to offer you a bigger role. You've shown me that you can handle the pressure, the decisions, and the responsibility that comes with leadership. Now, I think it's time for you to manage a larger team. You'll be overseeing multiple projects, and you'll be working more closely with the executive team." Sarah's breath caught in her throat. A bigger role? Overseeing multiple projects? The thought was both exciting and terrifying. She had always worked in smaller teams, and the idea of managing a larger one seemed like a giant leap. "I'm honored," Sarah said after a moment, her voice soft. "But I'm not sure if I'm ready for that. I've only just started getting comfortable with my current role." David smiled, his expression warm and understanding. "I understand how you feel. But that's the thing, Sarah. You've already proven you can handle more. You're capable of much more than you realize." Sarah stood there for a moment, the weight of his words sinking in. She had been questioning herself for so long, and now, here was David, someone she admired and respected, telling her that she was ready for more. It was both empowering and intimidating. "I'm just afraid of failing," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. David's smile didn't fade. "Everyone is afraid of failing, Sarah. But you have something that many people don't. The ability to learn, to grow, and to ask the right questions when you don't know the answer. That's what makes a great leader." Sarah felt a warmth spread through her chest at his words. She had spent so much time doubting herself, but maybe, just maybe, she had what it took to succeed. "I'll do it," she said, her voice stronger now, filled with a newfound determination. "I'll take on the role." David nodded, his expression proud. "I knew you would. And don't worry, I'll be here to guide you every step of the way. You're not alone in this." As Sarah left the conference room, she felt a surge of excitement mixed with a deep sense of purpose. This was the opportunity she had been waiting for, and for the first time in a long time, she felt ready. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but Sarah knew she had the strength to face whatever challenges came her way. She had already come so far, and now, with David's support, She was ready to take the next step in her journey. As the weeks passed, Sarah dove headfirst into her new role. The larger team, the increased responsibilities, the high-profile meetings, everything seemed to be moving faster than she could keep up. But instead of feeling overwhelmed, she felt a strange sense of exhilaration. She was becoming the leader she never thought she could be. The first few days were filled with learning, adjusting, and figuring out how to manage multiple projects at once. She worked late into the evenings, her mind constantly buzzing with ideas and solutions. There were moments when she questioned herself, when she felt the weight of it all on her shoulders. But every time she doubted, David was there to remind her of her strength. "You're doing great, Sarah," he would say with a reassuring smile. "You've got this." Those words became her anchor. One afternoon, Sarah found herself standing in front of a large conference room, preparing to present a new strategy to the entire executive team. She had spent days crafting the proposal, poring over every detail. But now, as the meeting loomed ahead, she felt a tight knot form in her stomach. She knew that this presentation could make or break the next phase of the company's growth. As she walked into the room, her eyes met David's. He gave her a subtle nod of encouragement, and for the first time in a long time, Sarah didn't feel the weight of the room. She felt ready. She stood in front of the room, her voice steady as she began her presentation. She spoke with confidence, outlining the key strategies that would drive the company forward. As she explained her vision, she noticed the reactions of the executives. Some nodded in agreement, others took notes. But what struck her the most was how they listened. She wasn't just a waitress who had been given a chance. She was Sarah Miller, a leader with a plan. When she finished, there was a moment of silence before David spoke up. "This is exactly what we need," he said, his voice filled with pride. "Sarah, your ideas are exactly what will take this company to the next level." The room erupted into applause, and for the first time, Sarah realized that this was her moment. She had not only earned her place at the table, she had become a key player in the company's future. The following days were a whirlwind of meetings, decisions, and follow-ups. Sarah worked tirelessly, but each success fueled her confidence. She began to trust her instincts more and more, making bold decisions that paid off. One evening, as she sat in her office, reviewing a project report, she received a message from David. "Can we talk?" it read. Her heart raced. Was something wrong? Had she made a mistake? She quickly gathered her thoughts and walked to his office, her mind racing with questions. When she entered, David stood up from behind his desk, a warm smile on his face. "Sarah, you've been doing an incredible job. I've been watching you grow into this role, and I couldn't be prouder of the leader you're becoming." Sarah's breath caught in her throat. This was the moment she had been waiting for. David continued, "I've been thinking. You've earned so much trust from the team, and I think it's time to take things to the next level. I want to offer you an even bigger role, one that involves overseeing a whole division." Sarah couldn't believe her ears. A bigger role? She had come so far, but this? She had never imagined something like this could happen so quickly. "Are you sure?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Absolutely," David replied. "You've shown me what you're capable of. You've earned this." As she left David's office that evening, Sarah felt like the ground beneath her feet had shifted. She was no longer the girl who doubted her abilities. She was Sarah Miller, a leader, ready to take on whatever came next. The journey was far from over, but for the first time, she was truly excited about the road ahead. With the support of David and her own determination, Sarah knew that nothing was out of reach.